Let's take a deep dive into reference fusion compositions in DaVinci Resolve. A reference composition is essentially fusion work that takes place in one place in the media pool and then is linked to multiple places in the timeline. So you can build one effect and use it in different places and maintain that effect in one place. Updates go automatically to wherever you use it. This can have advantages for certain types of effects works, for example, some form of overlay or image-based effects. You can also use it in a very different way. You can use it instead of a fusion clip to combine multiple timeline layers into one fusion comp. And in this case, unlike the fusion clip, you do maintain access to full source resolution. This is something that only the reference fusion composition can do. So I will show you how you can use it there and how you access that resolution and where you have to pay attention where things can go wrong. I give you an example with a video collage. And then finally, I look into a compositing example, because even there, I think there are some cases where it makes sense, especially if you have edited source media from one source clip and you have like a repeating camera angle, very similar work again and again. You can, of course, apply the same fusion effect. Often you have to change some things like keyframes, some tracking data, some magic mask, etc. Sometimes that means you have to copy and make those adjustments on a copy, but sometimes the reference clip can work, and I will show you exactly when and how I would handle this. So let's have a look at all of this. I'll start out simply and then go into some of the more detailed tips and tricks. This tutorial is supported by MotionVFX. Thanks a lot for this, and let's dive in. First, let me quickly review the different ways of how we can access Fusion and copy stuff around, etc., and then see how it compares to the new referenced composition that came in with version 19. So, of course, you can always, on any clip in Fusion, just click the Fusion icon and enter into Fusion on a clip. And then if you do anything and you want to copy it around, you can use the clips bar here, which works the same way as in the color page, and you can right click apply composition or middle mouse button. You get a confirmation that you want to override what you're doing, and this way you have copied something from one clip to the other. Let me reset this, because that's certainly not the effect I'm going for here, but that's what you can do from the Fusion page directly. Now, if you are thinking more about applying edit effects and then perhaps refining them, let's do that. Let's take the effects library, and I'll use an effect from MotionVFX from the mJourney package, where I have a camera overlay, which is something I am thinking about here, like a recording overlay. Now this you can just drag and drop like any effect, right? And it lives in the effects section of the inspector. You have all the controls here, whatever you want to customize and change. If you want to customize more or add things in Fusion, combine things, you can, of course, hit the Fusion icon here. This is different from if you worked from scratch in Fusion, because all these effects, transitions, titles, and so on, they all use the timeline resolution, which is in some way edit-friendly and efficient, but for certain effects it's not ideal. For an overlay like this, it's not a problem, but you see here, we are, even in Fusion, restricted to the timeline resolution, even though the media itself was Ultra HD. So that can be an issue. It's just something to be aware of what's happening here. Finally, you can create Fusion clips. So with multiple even things that are on top of each other, you can do right-click, create a new Fusion clip, which is pretty much the same as a compound clip, just that you have media in nodes created for all of these. And then when you go to Fusion, you see those media in nodes directly. But again, you are restricted to the timeline resolution. This is otherwise a bit similar to what we will see with the reference composition, but working on timeline resolution, and everything is kind of encapsulated, everything is brought in, and you no longer have access to anything on the edit page in that way. Let me undo this and mention the last point just for completeness. You can use an adjustment clip and then put your effect on the adjustment clip like this. And then you can drag that over different clips or so, and can use this, for example, for overlays or effects that you want to time independently in the timeline. Again, adjustment clips is limited to the timeline resolution. It works with whatever the timeline is sending in from the layer underneath. It's not linked to the original clip, which sometimes we want. All right, let me remove this again and show you the new option. So now we can do the following. We can do a right click on any clip, and we have here a new option since version 19, create referenced composition. And when you click this, you get to name that. So let's call this camera effect create, and it is being created in the media pool in the folder that is currently open. So I'm in a folder called referenced comp, which I created beforehand. I already have another one, and now we added this one, camera effect, the one that I just created, added this into the media pool, and this effect is linked to this clip. You see this little symbol here which shows that it's in this clip, and now you can double click on the media pool or open the clip where it's linked, open that clip in Fusion. Either way, you end up inside this referenced composition and can build the effect here. Let's do a few simple things. Let's desaturate this, and I don't know, let's make this like stereotypical poor surveillance camera. Let's bring in from the Shift spacebar menu a JPEG damage, not that much damage, maybe like this. All right. By the way, if you want to access other effects from the edit page, you can always do that from the effects library. So under templates, you also have edit effects. So if I want my MotionVFX template again, for example, I can just bring that in here. So I can also add that here. And in this case, there's one difference. Here I am working on Ultra HD, which may be what I want if I want to zoom in or do anything that requires the resolution. But this particular effect has a setting 4K quality, and you have to enable it for it to work properly. Some of these effects are built that way. Now let's bring it somewhere else. Let's go to the edit page and go to some other clip. Let's say this one, for example, right click, and I can link to reference composition as long as it's selected in the media pool. So you might have multiple, so you just select the reference composition first, then right click, and then link to reference composition, and you see the same clip is and same effect is being applied here. Back to Fusion, let's add an effect where we can play a bit more. Now I can distort this and zoom in or whatever I want to do, but let's actually add a text effect. I just want to show you one fun little addition. Let's say we want to give this like individual camera angles for our surveillance camera overlay. In this case, I could type something here, right? And bring it into the corner here. And now I have my overlay in here. Now this is of course now here where the reference composition is linked, and the same happened here. So if I change it in one place, it's changed everywhere, right? It's just one composition, again, linked to different places. But there is a little trick that I can do. I have one place that I have found where I can access information from the edit page. There are a few things that you can access. You could access the media resolution, but you can also access the clip title. And in this case, if you look at the media in node, you see up here the clip name. You see this clip name, and this is a field that is available in Fusion that links back to the edit page, and we can actually use that field. So let's just do that for fun. I will just pin the media in for a second, go to the text field, do a right click expression. And now in this expression field, I'll just use this pick whip to go to the pinned media in down here to the clip name. And now you see I have the clip name in here. Let's do this properly right aligned on the side and scale it down or whatever. Okay, I'm not going to spend time on this, but you get the idea that I can access the clip name, and that is of course different depending on which clip I am. And pro tip, if you want to, you can find the clip in the edit page, Alt F, and you could rename it Camera 2, for example. And now it doesn't necessarily update right away, but if you just switch pages and come back, whenever the Fusion comp is updated again, you will see it. You might have to trigger a new caching if you have clip cache, Fusion cache enabled. So now you see I have actually a customized text between edit page and Fusion. Just for advanced users and people who like strange hacks, we could drive that one level further. We could do something completely custom in Fusion for the different cameras. Let me show you how. You can bring in for example, a switch node. This is new in version 19.1. You could also use a dissolve or a merge or so. I just wanted a node to do something completely different things, and I'll just do two text nodes, tests. Here we go. And the switch node will switch between the different inputs. So whatever you connect there, it will either use this connection in the node graph or it will use the other connection. So that's kind of convenient. So we're switching between test and camera 2. And I could use again an expression to drive this. And again, this is a little bit advanced, but I go into expression and select the media in 1 for that expression. Again, use this field, and this time I want the name and specifically the string from within that name field. To access this, you have to type .value. That's something special about Fusion text fields. .value gives you the string, and we can, with a double equal sign, compare that and say if this is cam2, then I do an AND. So when this expression is true and there's an AND expression, then the second one will be executed. So I write AND 1 or 0 if it's not true. This is this is one way of writing if then else expressions in Lua. You don't have to do it. There's also an if shortcut function that was built for these things. There are different ways of doing this. I like this. Again, it's a little bit advanced, but you see the input now switched to input 1 because our clip name is cam2. And if I go to the other one, we are again on this branch. So for clip 1, we are using this branch. Or for the clip with this name, we're using this branch because the if statement here doesn't match. And for the other one, the statement does match and we're using this branch. This is probably a bit technical, hacky, goes probably beyond to what you typically would do, but some people love those tricks, so I like to share them. Next, I go back to something more common and easy. I want to build a kind of collage with some image overlays and want to maintain some flexibility for it from the edit page and layer things in the edit page, but have the effect itself driven through Fusion. But before I continue, quick shout out and big thanks to MotionVFX for supporting this video. Now you see, I do love going into Fusion and building stuff myself and doing all this stuff, but you also see that it takes time, and in practice it always takes even more time than in a tutorial. That's where a high quality template library or high quality effects packages can come in to place, and this is where MotionVFX really excels. They have really well-made stuff with lots of titles, transitions, effects, everything you might need for a project. So if you are on a deadline, like almost everyone is these days, you may want to check it out. It can really speed up your project. It can improve the quality of your output or give you a starting point to customize things yourself, even if you want to do some tweaks on your own. So if this sounds interesting to you, if you're watching this as this video comes out, we are approaching Black Friday and there are some deals coming out. I am putting the links and coupon codes and whatever you need in the description of this video. So if this is something for you, please check it out. And with this, thanks again. Let's return to the tutorial. So let me build a video collage with these 3 clips here, 1, 2, 3, and I will select all of them, do a right click on the topmost clip, right click, create referenced composition. Let's call it collage, and I should have changed the media pool folder first so that it ends up in a place where I can find it again. Let me do that again. And now you may notice when you look at the icon here that the actual link, the reference composition, is only on the top clip. It's not on this. I only linked it on this clip, but I had all of them selected while creating that link. And what that does for me is, even though the composition is only linked here, when I go in there, you see that I have media in nodes that refer to all the different timeline layers that were selected when I created it. So I see 3 media in nodes, each referring to a different timeline layer here. And I have this set up here by default, and even a default background. This is just transparent, just something to work on top. And then the rest comes in. The background in this case is Ultra HD, even though the timeline is 1080p. And the background is based on the lowest clip in the timeline. So the lowest clip here was this one here. And yeah, this one was an Ultra HD clip. And that's why the background uses a auto resolution, which uses the default resolution of your comp, and the default resolution is being set to the lowest layer as you create this. Now we have different clips with different media because I wanted to show you some things that can go wrong or that might surprise you otherwise. So you see here this clip with the forklift is an HD clip, and the other one here is again an Ultra HD clip. Now I probably sorted the layer in a strange way. I wanted the forklift as the background and then the others on top. Now I should have probably changed it in the layer order. You know what? We can still do that. I can still go into the edit page and bring the forklift down and bring this up. Go back into Fusion, and you see it was changed. And now my transparent background is Ultra HD because it's still linked, the auto resolution is still linked to the lowest media in from the timeline, and this one is now coming in HD. So this is something that can trip you off if you change stuff, but it also has advantages. So it's good that there is a default auto resolution, because very often you have the biggest canvas and the lowest layer, and you just want to work on that and want to make sure that you don't lose resolution while working. So it kind of makes sense to align everything to that. But it's not always the case, depends on what kind of effect you build. And if you don't want that, you can always go in here and turn the auto resolution off and manually set whatever you want to set. All right, so let's change some things. Let's go into these merges and build like a mini collage. Let's do this like 0.2 or so. And this one also 0.2. I bring it over, oops, and bring it into the view. So we have 2 clips like this. And let's quickly also add a mask just to make it a little bit interesting. I'll add a polygon mask, and because we see some cutting going on, I'll make like a very rudimentary somewhat arbitrary cutout pattern, a bit irregular, whatever, like this, and attach it to both. And let's do one more thing. Let's bring in a background node just to show you again how it works with the resolution. Now I brought in a background node. I press Ctrl T to bring it underneath, but this background here is 1920 by 1080, even though this clip here is Ultra HD. 2 ways of doing it. I can disable the auto resolution here again and set it to Ultra HD, or I could use the resize node and bring it down in this case because it's so small anyways. Anyhow, I'll keep it simple. I'll just bring this, multiply this with 2, which is giving me Ultra HD resolution. I'll set this background to white, and I will use the polygon, copy, paste it, and on the background, this polygon, I will give it a bit of border width. And then that means in the merge, the border width comes makes the polygon bigger than the foreground, and this way I have a frame here And let's do that for the other one as well, simply by adding a merge here and just adding the same background here. Control T to switch foreground and background. So this way I have my setup with a white background masked out, and that's my entire effect. Now I could refine this, but that's not really the point here. The point was to show you how these things are still quite flexible in this case. So I could still change things. Now the way I've set it up, the forklift was the lowest, so I could, for example, change these two, but now I'm kind of changing foreground and background, and I'm again changing the resolution. And with this, I'm changing the canvas and how the merges fit those other images over. So you see, if I want that level of flexibility, I really have to be a bit careful. One thing I could do is put resize nodes in there or set this resolution manually, 1920 by 1080. That's one part, and the other one is this one here. And if I put a resize, because this will always come out in HD resolution, I can also fix this, and now it's pretty much good again, except for here where we still have something in the wrong resolution. This media node is now coming in HD. Previously it came in Ultra HD. Okay, you know what, I'll just put an Ultra HD resize in here and to be safe in here, and now I should have the flexibility of changing resolution of the incoming image, and my final comp will still work. Do you have to do this? Mostly no, because in most cases you won't want that flexibility to switch images like completely arbitrarily. I just want to point it out once if you want to make things like super flexible, so that you know where you might trip and where you have to pay attention, and you can fix it if necessary. But the great thing is really the flexibility here, that in the edit page you can still change those layers, can bring in different images even. Now they have to start with the clip. You can't have a cut, I believe. I think this won't work. So no, this doesn't work. So you cannot change from one clip to a different one. You have to stick to one clip, but you can replace them, retime them, move them around, and so on. That all works within the reference composition. Now let's go to a third example where I've also layered out something in the timeline, but this time it's a compositing example. And a typical scenario, sky replacement. I have already put the sky underneath in the edit page. Wouldn't it be nice to set it up the same way like in this video collage example, where we can still replace the sky image, still have a bit of flexibility? Maybe an editor has set this up with a little bit of edit compositing just in the edit page. You can, do a simple key or so directly from the edit page if you want. And then later you might go to Fusion. But what you typically have is, first of all, you may have the layers already. You almost certainly have them in different resolution, because sky photos, for example, are often like high resolution and have nothing to do with the media resolution. So you do want to work in a resolution independent way, or you don't want to limit yourself to timeline resolution when you zoom in or anything. And then another common thing is it's quite common that the same camera angle appears repeatedly, right? So we have it here, and I've just made a cut and just put a filler in between, and then let's assume we return to the same camera angle a bit later. Right? So in this case, we don't want to treat this as 2 times completely different work, right? It's practically the same, although it's a different time code, but otherwise it's basically the same. So I will link this to a sky replacement that I've already prepared up front, so we save a bit of time. So the first one here I've already done, and do right click here, link to referenced composition, and there is my sky replacement. Let's have a look. So in Fusion, I have, it's very, very basic, just the sky, a bit of color correction. I've transformed it a bit. Then I'm tracking it so that it's tracked to, with 2 points, it's tracked to the horizon. So as the camera moves around, the sky is following along. And then to mask her out and to mask the horizon out, I've used 2 techniques. I've used a magic mask, which is for her, basically, and I've combined this with a polygon to loosely track to follow the horizon loosely, and this also allows me to do a bit of a gradient with the polygon to like more smoothly blend it in and not worry about every tip of every tree. So that's my setup. The polygon is a bit animated as the camera moves, not perfectly, but I have some keyframes. Then the tracker has, of course, keyframes due to the tracking on every frame. That's typical for tracking. And the magic mask has its usual magic mask tracking, which stores the mask on disk, basically. Now let's see when we apply this to another clip. Let's go over here and right-click. I link it to the same selected reference composition from the media pool. Link to reference composition, and this looks wrong. So let's go into Fusion and see what we can do. Now, first of all my keyframes are off. So if you look at the tracker, there's no keyframe, none for the polygon. And if you look at the magic mask, it's just blank. A few different things here. So first of all, let me remove the magic mask for a second and look at the tracking first. So tracker. Yeah, the points are here. Well, they can't have really keyframes because if you go into the keyframe editor and just check where the keyframes are, they're all here. They're way before the render range because I worked on the same clip at an earlier time point. So I can actually even go there, I think, but I can't preview anything, I believe. No, I can't preview those frames from this current clip because they're outside the render range. They happened earlier, but the frame numbers here are linked to the source timecode, right? So since I'm working on the same clip, I just have to make sure that here I can somehow continue, right? So I will do the following. I'll close the keyframe editor, go to my tracker, go to the first clip, and just position them here wherever I want. I'll use the IntelliTrack here for, let's get some contrast from the trees and from trees against sky. And then, well, I'm not, I can do track forward reverse, I think, but in this case, I just go through the render range. I won't overwrite the old one because the tracker always works only within the render range, so I shouldn't have a problem here. So you see, I can track through, and now I have added keyframes. And if you check in the keyframe editor, we now have for the tracker, we have keyframes here over the new render range, and we have keyframes over the old render range. Same tracking node, doesn't interfere with each other. So it's not really a problem. And my setup can, with respect to tracking, can still work. And you see, I'm again tracked to those new points. If I track them correctly, I think that one of them might be sliding a bit, but generally it's working. What about the polygon mask? Well, this one was animated manually. Same thing, I can do the same again. I would suggest that you always put a keyframe on the very first and the very last frame if you do something like this, because you don't want to make any change and then later find out that it was interpolated and impacted the previous render range, right? Because if you do a drastic change, it might impact the frames before if there's no keyframe in between. So I'll just put a keyframe on the first frame, or even one frame before. We can go like to one frame before the render range, set a keyframe there to be certain, and then on the first frame adjust this again however we need it. And I just go to the first and last frame and maybe one frame in between, and I'm not even paying attention what I'm doing here. But you see, I have added my keyframes and the polygon is working accordingly. Now, what about the magic mask? Well, this one will not really work that way because the magic mask can only propagate it from the previous part. Let me disconnect the polygon for a second and work on the magic mask alone. So if I wanted to draw new strokes, that won't really work because it needs to be continued from the last render range. Now we have a gap. However, what we can do is, if we don't invert it, it had invert here. If we don't invert it, we still see the entire one. And in this case, if I go back to the other clip, let me show you. If I go to the previous clip, I can see that here we have her selected. And now here we are outside of the range of the render of the magic mask. And we just have nothing. So the image just goes through. Previously in my solution I had inverted it, in which case nothing comes through. But if I don't do this, then if there's no magic mask active, then the entire image goes through, which means I can add a second magic mask. Magic mask, let me add a second magic mask and do this one here and render. And I probably should have tuned this a bit, I did with the other one, but it's enough to explain the purpose. So in this case, I have two magic masks. The first one is doing nothing over this render range. The second one is doing the magic mask. And over here, it's the opposite. Here, the first one is selecting her. The second one is doing nothing because it's not tracked over this render range. So this magic mask is doing nothing on this clip. Because the render range is not overlapping, it's separate between the first and the second clip, my magic mask can work 2 times in a row. And now I just need to combine things and invert things and so on. So I might, for example, use a matte control, one of the tools to combine things, Alt connect to see the options. I add this to the, let's first invert and add this to the garbage matte. And then I can use this on the tracker to have again the mask connected. And this will now work on both, for both clips, same thing. This works fine, and I just have circumvented the problem with the magic mask that it does not track across the render range or beyond the render range. So you see I have compositing work across 2 clips, the same type of work, the same color corrections, the same sky image, the same everything, but I have continued the keyframing, I've continued the tracking, I've continued the magic mask with a little trick. I've added a second because I can't really continue it across render ranges efficiently. But with these little tricks I was able to customize things, but still keep the entire idea of the composite the same, keep the sky the same, keep the color corrections the same. So I can still advance this in one clip, in one place, change it, improve it, and then except for tracking and those things that need to be adjusted, everything else will just simply flow through without any need to copy stuff. If you imagine otherwise, if you copy things, whenever you copy, you have to pay attention that you don't copy the tracking data. So you have to go into your flow, take out certain nodes, copy them over, bring them in again, or copy everything and then redo the tracking and so on. So here we have kind of a best of both worlds approach. The downside is, of course, this does not work if the source render range is overlapping. So if someone used 2 different cameras or restarted the camera or transcoded the media in a way that the source timecode range is overlapping, then the frame numbers in Fusion will be overlapping, and then this will not work anymore. Now you could again access the clip name like I've shown you in the beginning and make some strange workaround, but probably you're in a scenario where maybe you might not use this solution here. Alright, that was it about the referenced Fusion composition, from motion graphics, simple overlays and effects work, to video collages, edit page compositing, to Fusion compositing, finally some VFX compositing example with a sky replacement. It can be quite useful. I was skeptical in the beginning when I saw this first, but over time I figured out some ways to use this, and maybe you want to use it too after this video. Thanks for watching, thanks again to MotionVFX, and see you next time. Cheers!